Um, Sonia, for the most part, uses the hops just go straight to the brewery, and they use them as decorations, and then they get rid of them. They get their hops in from agricultural production places, and when they're done, they have a bunch of stuff that's spent. But I don't believe she uses it. I'm pretty sure they've got a farmer that picks up the spent hops and spreads them on their field. Um, I'm I can't see why it wouldn't be good compost. In England, they use kind of whatever is grown in the local area. You can smell when you go into a garden in the spring what they've just spread all over on their beds, from strawberry fields or from mustard fields. Not mustard, I guess it's rape, but I will ask. I know that there's been jokes about Sonny's dog diving into the compost, the spent hops bin. That dog gets in, if it's halfway edible, she'll get into it. She's been pulling carrots right out of the ground. She's managed to pull the carrots right out of the ground. She doesn't really dig them up, she just pulls them up. Now she's begun digging potatoes. How she knows there's potatoes under there, I don't know. And Sonia says it's an interesting smell when a dog eats potatoes and then farts all night long. Sorry for those who just came on. Hi, Gretchen. Anybody got any questions for me? Or Steve is here. He's feeding the dogs, but he is here.
I will ask a question. This is related to my seven sons shrub that was growing beautifully. So I took the fence around it off because the deer didn't bother. It was getting nice and big. And then the buck came and just massacred the plant. And now I'm wondering, should I just, what I have left, should I just cut it way, way back and just,
Yeah, that's what I've done, and they have totally they love that brittle wood. They slam it around. I just cut it right back to the ground. They grow like 3, 4 feet in a year, so you're going to get new stems coming up, which many times is an advantage with those seven suns because they grow them ugly at the nursery. They want them to get bushed out quickly, and they just don't have a good form to them at all. So you buy them, and they got crisscross branches and whatever. So if you cut it back, you do have that advantage of getting it started all over again in the form that you prefer. But yeah, I would. Um,
yeah, they really, and they destroyed, uh, you know, like I'm wondering if the, I mean, it looks like it's still alive, but they've destroyed half of the bark on one side. I mean, they just,
yeah, yeah,
so I'll cut that all back, I guess.
yeah. I literally the last one that they beat up at a clients in Bloomfield Hills. I just leveled it like it was a butterfly bush.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
That's
It's so
okay.
discouraging right now to,
It is. It's terribly discouraging when they come in there and do that because there was one time when I transplanted a big crabapple tree from the client's old house to the house they're moving into. And it was an all-day job pretty much to dig it up to one place, bring it over, put it in. And when I got done, I said, okay, I'm going to bring back my stakes and rope tomorrow. And they came that night. They came that night and beat the living daylights out of that tree. It survived, and actually seems to be okay now. But I mean, they walk through every night looking around. 24/7 predators, 24/7 pests. I don't see Arena here yet, but Arena said she did find the book that I like so much. She said I found it at the book sale at the library, so she got that, and she also picked up Gardner's Bug Book. I went, oh, that's good. Cynthia's got Westcott is. I think she was writing in the 20s and 30s and on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. She was a pathologist and kind of an early celebrity, an early author who was well regarded in the horticultural circles and in the public. They called her the plant doctor. And when I saw that, I went, we had that Garden's Bug book. So I went looking for it and for another one, which is called The Garden Disease Handbook by Cynthia Westcott. I think it's gotten in its fifth or sixth edition now, but it's a good book. And I couldn't find either of those. I said, well, come on. You have those books someplace. I'm convinced that in the smaller house that we were in earlier, that we were better organized than here, where we have books in my office, books in Steve's office, books in the living room. Um, But yeah, if you find something by Cynthia Westcott, it's good stuff. You have to, I did find two of them, the Plant Disease Handbook. Um, and that particular edition's from the 70s. Originally it was from 53, early 50s. And Garden Enemies, as long as you understand that she was writing back before anybody knew that it was not a good idea to put lead arsenate on something. But in terms of identifying what the problem is, she was regarded as maybe the first plant diagnostician in the country, who was teaching people how to diagnose problems. So good books to have. And that's Gardener's Bug Book. There's another one called Garden Disease Handbook, Garden Enemies, Plant Disease Handbook. I've forgotten. There's a couple others. But I had no other questions than that. My neighbor already took out the bush. Boy, she's on top of things. The white Julia that was full of poison ivy, it was gone 2 days later. Um, not messing around with that. And I think it's a good idea. Well, you can still identify it by the leaves because most people can't really tell the vines by themselves, one from the other. More sawfly on the roses. Oh, I thought we'd be done with them by now too, but we're living in a warmer zone than we were before. Kind of like when you read about some of these things, that in Michigan there's 2 generations per year of X. But in New Jersey, there's 3 generations, and sometimes 3 or 4 in Georgia. And we just gave them more time. I'd like to think that that wiped out some of what was going to hatch out next spring. And if you squish the ones that you found there, well, then that's that many more less for coming out next year. More squishing. Yeah, we're very mean people, really. We're out killing things right and left. Trying to decide what's good and what's not good is very difficult to do. The box elder bugs, we don't have very many of them, but the box elder bugs are making themselves apparent when you're out uh, taking weeds out or cutting anything down. I was cutting down our perennial garden, and about every bucket full of stuff that I took out, there were box elder bugs climbing around. And other than seedling box elders, we don't have any box elders in our yard. But we must have the good habitat for them to spend the winter, which I hope is better than the side of our house. The side of our house faces west, and it is a fairly light colored siding, and that's what they look for. Is they look for those warm places that warm up in the afternoons in the wintertime. And if they decide to cluster on the side of your house, they will push each other in underneath the siding, and they'll come in through the electrical outlets and wander around in the house. They don't eat anything, they don't bite anything, but you just don't like to have bugs wandering around. Steve came in just a bit ago with walked into his office, and the dog started woofing at him. She loves to chase bugs. And he said, what? Oh, he said, I heard him say, oh, I see. Just a minute, I'll take care of that. A bumblebee had come in, was hanging onto his pant leg, and the dog noticed it and was after that bumblebee. Oh, Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Go ahead.
Hi. So since you're looking for questions, and I know I have a question I was supposed to ask you like last week, but now I can't remember it. But so this is a totally off the cuff question. Those woolly caterpillars that are the brown with the black center,
With a
what
stripe
do
on
they turn into?
a moth called a owlet? No, not an owlet. Tiger moth. No, the yellow ones, the yellow ones with the band are a tiger moth. They're called, it is a moth, and it's not a particularly pretty name. I was joking the other day that if I was them, I'd want to be called the tiger moth and let that other one have another name. But it's just a brown moth, a good sized moth, not one of those little tiny ones that sometimes hatch out of stuff in the kitchen or get stuck with the bug zapper outside. But just a moth. I think.
Cocoon or anything, or do they just stay rolled up for the winter and then they
Yeah,
don't
they
have
pretty much stay rolled up for the winter. They'll do things like get themselves into crevices in a wood pile or in a garage. Um, I'm always amazed to see them in January crawling across the floor of the garage, or you bring in a piece of wood to burn in the fireplace and find that they're on there. They're still moving around. They move kind of slowly. And spiders are like that too. I watch them in the wintertime when I used to work outside every day. On telephone poles, you'd open up a terminal to check your wires, and there would be a spider in slow motion working its way across the terminal points. It's kind of neat to see that they just keep on going, even though it's really cold.
Hi, sorry, I was having trouble getting unmuted here.
Move your controls around again.
I don't know. I know you've answered this question many times before, so please be patient because it seems I still forget every year. But is it too soon to fertilize and put shredded leaves down?
No, it is not too early as long as you're using something that's slow release. As the soil
Palatable.
cools down, the natural processes take care of making it sit there.
Okay.
Only the cool guys can get to it. I started putting leaves on this week. I was cutting down the perennial part of our garden, and the neighbor was mowing her leaves and asked if I wanted them. I said, "Yep, I want them right over here." I didn't put any fertilizer down. I'm waiting for a new fertilizer test result to come back, and we didn't fertilize at the library because we're waiting for the fertilizer test. But if I had it, I'd be putting it down.
Okay. I do have another question. We had, for the past couple of weeks, we had a bird going into our birdhouse and just hanging his or her head out for a long time, just watching us. So we hadn't cleaned the birdhouse out yet, but I know it needs to be cleaned out, but so we did clean it out. And now I'm wondering if that little guy was thinking of having that as a nice place to go in the winter out of the wind.
Could be. I've never seen them in the houses in the wintertime, but any bit of protection in an open space would make sense.
Yeah, but that was the strangest thing. We thought that maybe he was just looking through the kitchen window and watching TV. I don't know, but but is there something, now that we've cleaned it out, should we put something else in to kind of cushion it?
I don't think so. Every bird species that I've looked up has a different way of building what they consider a good thing to sit on. Some use sticks and some use grasses and some make a little cup and I think I'm remembering the wren, the house wren, that the male stuffs sticks in and sets up the place that he feels will be the house, and then he brings the female around and she either approves it or she doesn't. And we watched this one female jump in, jump out, and apparently she approved it because they both stayed together. But then the female went back in and began pushing sticks out. Yeah, kind of cool.
I usually clean our houses out early spring or late winter and let them
Oh,
stay over winter, but I don't know.
You're trying to get out there before the nesting season
Yeah.
starts.
yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and it is a good idea to clean. I mean, it's essential to clean them out if you're trying to help the birds out because I remember, I'm pretty sure I was reading about bluebirds, but there is a blowfly that lays its eggs in the nesting material the bluebirds have, and the larvae attach themselves to the fledglings and the nestlings, and it's like a huge leech on them, and you don't want to let the bluebirds come back next spring and go into a nest that's already been fouled by those guys. So you clean it out, and then some people spray it out with a little bit of bleach solution.
Good evening and welcome to Free4All Friday, where we come and celebrate growing and cultivate problem solving. This is our 57th edition of our Free-for-Alls.
And
We're coming to you from Garden.
we're gardenaz.org. I'm Janet Makatovich.
I'm Stephen Nicola.
And I somehow lost control here. I know.
Uh,
Yeah. Not
That's
quite
a-
sure what's weather today, was it, Steve? I had long sleeves on and a
Nope.
long sweater most of the afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little cool out, but still a nice day.
Yeah, fall might finally be getting here. We hope that you'll tell people about gardenaz.org. I'm so glad that you tell us what you find there, because today, for instance, while I was putting together our pictures and our topics for tonight, I found several things on the site that went, oh, that's not up yet, and was posting things. I wouldn't notice they're there unless people are asking and they're looking for them. And that's what we want to do. We want to have all of the things that people have asked us about put there in one place. So we've got a library of the solutions we've come up with, and then we can keep going from there. And that's what Free for All Friday is all about, is to keep us attached, connected to people, and help you stay connected to each other. As you hear the questions that other people have or the celebrations that other people have, then we all are one step further with plants and situations that we wouldn't have had in our own yard, or haven't yet gotten into, or have had and never figured out what happened. It's a lot of fun talking to people. So tell people, anybody who wants to can come and join us on Friday. This Kildare
No.
was so amazing. She sat there while the kids stood all around her looking at her and quivered. She was afraid, but she would not leave those eggs. Meanwhile, her mate was running around on the far side. He was supposed to be at that point dragging a wing and luring us away, but he obviously didn't know his act. She was an amazing bird.
Yep, she was. Nothing in chat.
Okay. It's been a long fall. I don't know if this is going to be normal, but it is the way that it is. Um, I just thought there was an interesting thing that you might want to know. I've always noticed that the crickets keep chirping until the end of fall, but they chirp slower and slower. And there is a way to figure out the temperature, the air temperature, by listening to crickets. If it's a house cricket, call that a field cricket, your usual cricket. And I had set it up so that I could click on this and it would make the noise, but it didn't seem to translate. I guess I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But the house cricket is the typical one that you hear that drives you crazy when they get in the house. A loud metallic chirp. Set your little timer on your phone for 14 seconds and count how many times they do. And if you add 40 to that, it's going to be the degrees Fahrenheit. Tree crickets. Now, I don't know how how we would count tree cricket chirps, but when you go outside at night and there's like a susurration all around you, it's just a constant zzz. That's the tree crickets, and I don't know how you would count them, but you have to count them for a minute, divided by 4, and add it to 40. I've done the house cricket, field cricket one, and it comes pretty close. It was about 62 degrees, and I came up with 61.5 degrees when I did that. And that's a tree cricket picture that you have there. You know the field crickets, they're those black ones, black shiny guys. Time to bring things inside, because we can't tell just when it's going to get cold. It's coming in with the rosemary. And I didn't see if Irina is here, but this Irina and her husband brought in the outdoor plants, brought them inside and set up this new light setup. And she said, I just have to brag a little bit. I said, I would not. I'm not against that kind of bragging at all. That's a great thing. That looks like just shop lights. Now they're a little bit high above the plants, so they're when you figure out how many foot candles of light a particular plant needs, and sedums and echeverias need a lot of light. The bulb will be rated for 1,000 watts. I'm not funny. I forgot what they're called. Foot candles, what its foot candles are. But that only applies within like 5 or 6 inches of the light itself. So things that are a foot or 2 feet down from the light are not getting that much light at all. And it can help to have something where you can raise and lower the lights, or raise and lower the pots to get things closer to the lights. Yeah, I think it falls off by half every foot. So if it was giving you 1,000 foot candles, which is dim, it is giving you 1,000 foot candles near the bulb. As you drop a foot away, it drops down to 500 foot candles, and then down to like 250, which is more like what we have in our houses. And boy, some years even the hydrangeas are good color, but not this year. Droopy this year, which is why we decided that the red maple, probably the hybrid red maple, is our plant of the week. Most of the time when the maples go, they have some company. They have some hickories still in color, or oaks turning color, or lindens turning color. But this year, everything was so burnt out that there is more brown showing than anything else in the landscape. But the red maples, and probably the red silver cross is called Freemanni, or there's
Yeah,
another.
but that one was just a straight red species in a fabulous year.
Right, but I think that
Yeah, but
I
the
think
Freemanni is the most consistent red. There was
I
when
think
they're narrower and more columnar, went past four of them that were really nice color earlier and forgot to get a picture of them. But
I think it's probably because the silver maple is more resistant to dry conditions, whereas the red maple needs it wetter.
yep,
So the red maples, the straight red maples, are not doing such a good job this year, whereas the red silvers have not only that faster growth rate that they crossed them for in the first place, but a little more tendency to keep their foliage intact. Sugar maples are turning now too, but they've got a lot of brown on them, not looking so great. And the sugar maples are usually more upright, and the red maples are more round. But there are things like the Freemanii that are more upright.
I would call the sugar maples more oval shaped.
Upright oval, right?
Yeah.
And usually we're beginning to see a little bit of color on the spring witch hazels. And I just saw a nice black nice color, but not nice show.
Yep.
Normally they turn really deep red to red maroon. I like black gums a lot. But this year, so here's one in the yard where I was working this week. And it's got good color, but it's lost most of its leaves already because they were so dry. The black gums, Nissus sylvaticus, really love water, really like to be constantly moist, not drowned, but constantly moist. And here's why. So here's a spring witch hazel, probably Gelina. This one is, I think it's Gelina that we've got out there, Steve. I'm not sure.
Yep.
And you can see the potential that's there. The problem is that so much of the leaf was dried out and desiccated and died that we're seeing that brown. We're seeing all of those other colors rather than seeing the underlying orange or yellow or red as the photosynthetics are taken out of the leaf. So I don't think the witch hazels will catch up with color either. The milkweed beetle that was crawling around up. I said, I'm trying to pull that pokeweed out. You have to get off of there. They're big beetles, the milkweed beetles. I'm not sure where this guy's going to spend the winter. I thought they spent winter as pupas, a lot of times you'll find them rolled up and attached to the trunk of a tree in the bark. There'll be
He's just going for a last hurrah.
yeah, I guess so. Broadleaf mountain mint. Here's a few loose ends that we don't want to keep and find out next spring. Oh shoot, we never answered that to somebody. One was about straightening a tree, another was about the long decay, and then another one was about a native. I know that someplace we have pictures of Joanne Trzaskowski's apple tree that they had to prop up on one side because it was falling over. And I can't find that. I can't find the ones that we showed because we were talking about pruning a willow or Therese, and how it's all lopsided on one side, so it keeps falling over to that side. This is a tree that I did find a picture of. This is one of the wild cherries, choke cherries, not black cherry, but choke cherries that I put out here because it grows fast, and there are some native ones out there. And shortly after we put it in, it developed black knot. I'll show that to you later. And I had to cut the main trunk off. There was no way I could get around it. I had to cut below the damage. So I cut the main trunk, and on the blow up here, because I never took a picture of it, never meaning to show people, but you might be able to see the truncated main trunk there. And what it did is that it sprouted three branches from below and later another one. Now, as it grows, I have to decide which of those is going to become the trunk. And there's one that's straighter than the others back there, and time for me to take the others off. And the same thing goes with if your tree is crooked because it's heavy on one side, is to take the branches off of one side, knowing that this whole area down here, from where it's planted all the way up to probably here, we're not going to want any branches in the long run. Those are just there temporarily while the tree is growing. What we need is for that trunk to stay relatively straight or to straighten itself out and come back over center so that it's a balanced tree. And it's unfortunate that it's going to have a little bit of a wiggle in it when they straighten up that way, but there's no way you can pull them into being straight. It doesn't work that way. Trees grow at angles based on the tension that the wood and the weight puts on the wood and the type of crotch that it has. And they develop what's called pressure wood on one side of the branch that's being pushed down, and on the other side of the branch that's being pulled on the top. And when you apply any kind of girdle or stake tight to try to hold it still, you actually keep the tree from moving at that point, and that point develops a weak spot. And if it's going to crack off, it's going to be at that spot 20 years from now. So if you're going to straighten a tree, do it by removing branches to change the weight, and have a longer view of what's going on. Reading the Secret Lives of Dead Trees that Gretchen Denton referred us to, and I put the I'll do it again. I'm putting into chat the link that goes to this article. I was impressed by the similarity between between Mark Harmon's vision here and Steve, what's the name of the botanical garden right on MSU's grounds? The one that's up on the campus and has the Katsura and the big flower.
Beal Botanic.
Yeah, Dr. Beal started a project that has been going on for over 150 years already, where he buried seeds in a time capsule, and they dig them up I can't remember if they dig them up every 10 years, but they dig them up every so often and try to germinate them to see how long things last. And last I saw, moth mullein, the tall yellow flannel downy leafed plant, was still germinating in 150 years. So it's just that people could say, I might not be here, but we need to give it that long to see what's going on. It's pretty cool. Lots and lots, hundreds of blogs. It's an interesting article to read. And then we were talking with Marvin about, I was talking with you about digging things up and looking at the root to see what needed to be done to divide them. And this is prairie dock. And Marvin had a question about prairie dock, which is a great native wetland plant. A wetland that is not consistent. It wouldn't grow in water all the time. It grows where it dries out in the summer. And that's a great benefit, that while your rain garden is soaked, this plant is fine, but while it's dry, it's also fine. And he asked if I had any other pictures. Last time that we were here, I only had this picture that showed us a 2-year-old over here with the flower stalk up on top of it. So here's what it looks like when it gets going. So here's all of the basal leaves. They're all about waist high for me. And the stems come up naked and open yellow sunflowers all over on them, which the goldfinches just love. They sit on the tops of these branches and they wave back and forth. It's like a amusement park ride. But to give you an idea how tall they get, that's about 8 feet, a little over 8 feet at this point. And it's nice because it's unlike cup plant. This is a cousin of cup plant, but cup plant has leaves all the way up the stem. And when you have to get them in the fall when they are ripening their seed and those stems flop over into the road or your driveway or your walkway, you've got a lot to cut off. With these, there's less to cut off, and the big leaves on the bottom will just lay themselves down and turn into brown, crinkly material that you can leave there if you want to leave there. Yeah, that's our old native wet area. Prairie dock, Culver's root, hoary vervain. Look at how many more flowers it has there than in hoary vervain followed us here, must have been on our tools and boots, but it just showed up. It is native, but it wouldn't be native in the ecosystem that we moved into. But it showed up here and keeps coming up, and it has probably half as many flowers on it. Joe Pye, our favorite sage.
There's a question from Jocelyn. Has anyone tried to root a fuchsia plant? I had mine outside all summer and brought it inside for the winter. I pruned some of the woody stems to reshape it and wondered if I can just stick into potting soil after using some rooting hormone, or should I try to grow roots in water?
I will look for you and see. Probably my textbooks are not going to deal with doing it in water, because almost all of the growers root things in a soil mix or a sand or a perlite mix that they just keep misted on top. And they grow almost all those fuchsias from cuttings, so I know that it will grow from cuttings. You don't want to take a flowering branch. You want to take one of the new shoots that starts after you've cut it back, that has not developed any kind of flowering structure on it yet, and that's going to root better. But I can look at my textbooks and we'll send you an email, Jocelyn, and include that next time. I wish I had a producer that knew where I kept my books.
Yep.
And I know right where they are, but even Steve would have to flounder around a little bit in my books to see what's up. I've been cutting and weeding. I worked on perennial garden this week, but um, mostly I was working at a friend's place, and the leaves have already been falling there, and that bugs me to do that then because there's extra work. So the leaves have already started coming down here in this garden, this alternative lawn that we've shown you before, and I have to pull the leaves out away in order to weed properly. Because when I pull them away and get them out of the way, you find there's lots of things that are seeded, bittercress, oxalis. I'm pretty sure that I saw some chickweed in here too, chickweed over there. And those things, if I put the leaves on top of them, is probably at this point where they have so many leaves, it's not going to kill them to be smothered by leaves. It's just going to make them happier. And those are spring, winter weeds, which means that they grow very well in the cool weather and they'll be blooming by the time I get out in the spring. So I need to be out there to get rid of them. And either I'm going to put a piece of newspaper on top of those and then leaves on top of that, or I'm going to scrape them out first or weed them out first, depending on what kind they are. And I'm also looking for all of the trees. Woody plants, fall is my big time to get woody plants out. You can't help but find them because they're standing up where everything else is kind of relaxing down to the ground as the cold is there. And boy, I really want to get the mulberries out now before they've rooted all winter, and the black walnuts and the oaks that don't belong in there. Steve, if we took the middle of our lawn out and just let things grow, we would have an oak forest out there in no
I
time.
think so,
We
because
have
so many acorns get buried.
Yeah, we have white oaks, we have red oaks that come up. I think there's a black oak that came up at one of the places.
Mhm.
But I've been weeding, and no matter where it is that I'm weeding, like here, I just pulled out annuals, and you would think that that takes out the weeds, but look back there next to that ITA hedge, and that's where you're looking at all of those weeds we just saw. So this is the bed that I've been working in, and I went, oh, I just moved the weeds out of the section I'm in, the leaves out of the section that I'm in, weed the bed, and then put them back in again. Mostly I've been cutting down and weeding out woody weeds that I'm going to go back through in the next week when we empty the container plants that she's got, and we'll use that as mulch on top of the leaves to help them hold them down. We made the front of the house look nice enough to take a picture because our friend is suddenly has to move to a new house. Her husband was hurt in an accident, and when he comes home in a couple of weeks, he's been in the hospital for months and months. When he comes home in a couple of weeks, it's going to be nearly impossible for them to navigate in this house. So she's moving, and we were helping her try to get things ready to go. And we cut a lot of things down. And one of her weeds, choose your weeds. We've used this term before that our friend Will taught us. It means decide which weeds you're going to let seed around because they can, as they come up, if they're dense enough, sorry, if they're dense enough, they can discourage other plants from coming up just by their density. Teresa chose morning glories. And ever since we grew morning glories at our other house, and every time I came out in the growing season, I had to cut my way through the side gate because the morning glories overnight would have twined the gate to the gate post. I decided I'm not doing morning glories anymore. But right there, that mound that you see there, I'm looking down at it from the porch. That mound is the yew. And you can't leave that stuff on there to turn brown the first time there's going to be a frost, and the picture will be full of brown stuff in front of your house. And it's also not good for the plant that it's on to be smothered and shaded out. So I was surprised as I started cutting it back, which is great fun with morning glory. Anybody who's ever done it knows that it's hard to figure out which to cut and which direction to pull. But I was surprised that the yew is in pretty good shape underneath. A little bit pale in a couple of places, but the most part, it may have been protected from some of the drought by having a cap on top of it. I was cutting down peonies, and it's late to be cutting down peonies for me. I'd like to be cutting them down in September, not middle of October, because I want to cut them down before any botrytis, any pinpoint infections of botrytis that may have infiltrated the stem. I want to get them before those have descended into the root and infected part of the root. And when you see a hole in the middle, when you cut them back, it's likely that botrytis has found its way down in. There is a an article on the site. If you put into the search engine peony botrytis or raise that peony, since you know that's what it's called, the point is that if your peony had any dark spots anywhere on it, red brown spots on the leaves or on the stems, you want to cut it down. Just take it out of the picture. And this one I took out of the picture, shoot, early September. But what happens is that the infection goes all the way down into the stem and then into the tuber and begins to eat away at the tuber. The new bud, as it comes up in the spring, comes with spores already on it to start the botrytis over again. So I don't want to leave hollow stems sticking up. I want to cut it as far down as I can cut it. And I'm also, in doing that, I'm getting rid of the stubble. This is a hibiscus, and I've already gotten rid of a bunch of the stubble. Here, here, here. Almost every stem had a stem from last year or the year before right next to it, making it very difficult to cut it all the way down. And every year, if you leave the stubble, it just gets worse. It gets thicker and thicker to get to. Hibiscus buds for next year are at the base of the stem. They aren't even swelled up yet. You have to look real hard to see that there's like eyes on a potato there. And they're going to come from below the ground, and they're going to have to weave their way through all that stubble too. So cut things down harder. As I cut things down, and I'm cutting almost everything that I cut down with hand pruners. I don't see well at a distance, and I'd rather work closer to the ground like that. As I see things like this, then I say, okay, I'm throwing that not in the compost. I'll let that go to the yard waste facility because they hot compost things. This is a Japanese anemone leaf. Actually, it might be a robustissima. It might be one of the grape leaf anemone leaves. And it's got it's been infested with leaf and stem nematodes. They're little microscopic worm relatives that swim up through the plant and eat in the leaf, and they're bound by the veins. They're stopped by the veins, so you get these marks that are very angular going along the veins. And if you keep them, and there's one that's a little less, got a little less of it. If you keep those leaves around, you're just reinfecting next year. So when you see a plant that is in trouble, go ahead and throw that stuff in a different pile and hot compost it, bury it deep, or send it out to a composting facility. But even with leaves on them, and these anemones have been eaten so many times by the deer that they're still got flower buds all over them. They've been being pinched back. But I'm going to cut that all the way down to the ground and get all the stubble out of there. Any questions?
Nothing in chat. No hands raised.
Totally.
Nothing in my mind.
Starry false Solomon seal. Even though we've said this so many times, we have to celebrate the leaves in the fall because that's a resource worth keeping. And I'm pretty sure that everybody here already is using leaves, but I got a question this week about leaves from Judy. Judy said that in her yard, she has a nice oak tree, a majestic oak tree, she called it, and also a couple of Norway maples planted on the street. And she has noticed that the leaves don't break down by the spring. So she's thinking about shredding them. But if she shreds them, then the insects that might be associated with the oak leaves would be in trouble. We went back and forth in email a couple of times just to say that one, the leaves don't have to be gone by spring. The plants can come up through them. And the taste buds of worms are one of the reasons that it works that way. Worms like apple, birch, cherry, and some of the maples, but they don't like oak leaves. There's too many tannins in the leaf, I think, and they don't like sugar maples as much. And so those leaves don't get broken down by their cool season decomposers. They wait until the soil warms back up again in the spring and the fungus breaks them down. And they're broken down by the middle of summer. So if you can take the look of the plant, of whatever you've put on the garden, go ahead and leave it there and leave the plants to come up through it. If you have all one kind of leaf, this is all sugar maple leaves falling here. If all one kind of leaf, you might want to borrow some leaves, as most of us do, from neighbors and mix in some birch and crabapple, because if they're mixed together, then you're encouraging the decomposers to work their way through and keep the layer fluffed up, keep air between the layers of leaves. Or you can shred them. I think for the most part, there are insects in the leaves, but most of the insects that live with oaks are going to be on twigs, on branches, in the bark, or are pupating in the ground. I don't think we're going to disturb the balance that much by shredding them, but I don't know that, so I'm just guessing. And that's what our gardens look like at the old house all the time. I don't think we got a picture yet of me throwing the leaves in this garden, but
Nope.
we've begun doing that. My neighbor has a very nice silver maple, and I love silver maple leaves. They're crunchy and they're small. Across the street there's a sugar maple, and we'll get those and put them in. If you're worried about them blowing, and actually once they're down and they're moist, so you might wet them down to start with. Once they're down and they're moist, as the fall continues to be warm during the day, the fungus do work on them and the fungal threads hold them together. So there's really not very much blowing that happens. But I had a neighbor that always, when he gave me his bags of leaves, he would always say, I don't want these back. So for his sake, I would throw a little bit of mulch, colored veneer mulch, on the top, or lay twigs down, twiggy branches down on top of the leaves to keep them from blowing around. But don't invite the squirrels in. Every time I put leaves down, the next morning there are explosions on the edge of the bed where squirrels have decided, oh, this is cool. I wonder what's under here. They're always remaking things. They're worse than cats. I meant to cut them off and bring them in, Steve. Last homegrown.
Oh, yep.
Do you still have that apron?
I do not think, I think you made me throw it out. I was going to wear it one time and the kids were over.
Yeah. Steve is showing off the tomatoes as they ripen. I brought them in and hung them on the hanger and put them into our dry, dark utility room. And they ripen in 2 or 3 weeks and keep the rest of them, the last of them. I went looking for where I could tell you to go to look on the website for that. And this is where I have to thank you for asking us questions and making us go look. Because when I went looking for it, I found what I had lost for a while, how to prune wisteria, the diagram that we drew. And there's something about hanging up your tomatoes in here, but not with those pictures in it. And then realized that we still had to put that one in, that it was still
Yeah.
waiting to get posted. So it reminds me to do that. Such a pretty plant.
So much stuff, so little time.
I don't know where you took this, but I love this picture. This guy
That was at Tony Avens.
he is amazing.
Yeah, he was pretty cool.
Yeah. Got a question from a neighbor about daylilies. She said, I understand that some of these are good daylilies and some of these are not good daylilies. And I've gotten all of these as divisions from people. And I know that one of them told me they were orange daylilies. So how do I find which one that is? And she had these two clumps. And I said, well, my guess is going to be that the one on the right is an orange daylily. It's a matter of comparison to look at them. The leaves tend to be wider on the wild orange daylilies than they do on the hybrid daylilies. And the roots on the hybrid daylilies form their tubers close in and don't run so much, whereas this one, the roots are running out. Now I don't know that for sure, so I can show you one that I do know. I do know that this is a hybrid daylily, and see how close to the crown the tubers form. There are some that extend themselves and form further out, but they don't reach out and run. So these are all formed fairly close to the crown. There's some that are running, but they're not running and they're running and forming bulbs at the end, tubers at the end. They're not running and forming new plants. See, there's a tuber forming back down there. Whereas the wild ones, and this is a variegated form of the wild orange daylily, which tends to revert, so I'm pulling the green ones off, is giving itself away by the fact that it's got such broad leaves. This one is a wild orange daylily that ran in. You may be able to tell that leaf is thicker, wider here and wider here than the narrower leaves of the good daylily that's in there. It's kind of mixed in with the tulips, but it's hard to tell. So I'm loosening with a fork and taking out the one that, see, it ran over from the mother plant, extended itself. This is broken off from where I took out the mother plant, but it came about 2.5 feet out and then turned, rather than into a tuber, it turned up and spread. And that's the problem with these. They make people think that their good daylilies turned orange. And it's not because they turned orange, it's because this faster growing thing inserted itself into the middle and is shading out the good daylily and outgrowing it. So that might be one way that you can look and see what's going on. And looking at roots, I love looking at roots and figuring out what they are. That prairie dock that can dry out, but also stand being sitting in basically a big puddle, has like a coating on the root that I think works to keep the water from moving into the big part of the root, but the water can only get in at the tips, and it limits the amount of water and the amount of rot that can happen to the main root. I dug up this, which is the Japanese burnet. We talked about this a little bit before. It's a very nice plant, not a native. Japanese burnet probably isn't native in Michigan. But it's a pretty plant and it belongs in moisture areas, and I like the way it grows. It's a big plant though. This is a 42-inch spade, and the flowering stalks are still above that. I'm making divisions out of it to share with the neighbors. The flowers are purple, you call these barbs purple. Oh, well, little bottle brushes that are now aged to kind of a red brown. They dry well as for a dried arrangement. The leaves are gorgeous, clean, a testament to the fact that our native insects don't really know what to do with these things yet. We have a Canadian burnet. This is Sanguisorba tenuifolia. We have Sanguisorba canadensis that does get eaten more than this one does. A little bit of chews here and there. But if you look at, here's a single division from the Sanguisorba, and you compare its consistent surface texture and the shape to Peridoc, it makes sense that they belong in the same kind of place. Something that can get flooded, but then also stand dry. And you can't tell by looking at it to start with. You have to rinse it off. When you rinse it off, then you can start putting your knife in, just like it's a balloon flower, and cutting off a section or two or three. Questions?
Nothing so far.
So we've been talking while I've been working in the garden. My friend has been working in her garage, sorting things out there. 30 some years worth of stuff, you know how that goes. She's sorting out in the garage, I'm sorting out in the gardens. And the conversation has been, well, what should I take with me? Because I'm leaving this garden behind. We faced the same question 8 years ago when we moved. They're moving from a big garden. The garden in the backyard is probably close to 5,000 square feet. And then they've got a whole front yard extension too. They're moving into a condominium unit where they'll have primarily this space to plant and possibly some space behind the house shaded by the oak tree and the black cherry tree that's back there. But so we've been talking about which things she has that she can take with her. And I said, the problem with your transferring the garden is twofold. You've got primarily a full sun, seen from a ways away garden. And so you've got a lot of big plants and a lot of things that need full sun. And you've now got a north facing door shaded on the east and the west by the garage and the house. So there's going to be very little direct light in there. And you can see that even a hosta is too big and it's going to block your use of the walkway. And if you're working on a handicap ramp or a triangle ramp to go right there so that you can get in, you're not going to want anything in the way. So we're working on a list of small things to take with her. That's number one. She's not.
Janet, can you go back to that for a minute? How
Yeah.
wide is that sidewalk?
Not very wide, not even.
I would probably just take that out and make it
a wider
sidewalk because with Jerry possibly being unbalanced and things.
Yeah. Although they'll probably take Jerry in more through the garage, and I haven't seen what the inside looks like.
I haven't seen the rest of it, but yeah, that makes sense.
But the one problem is that you're changing from a garden with a certain kind of soil, a certain kind of sun, and you're going to a different place, and things are not going to transfer all that well. The second issue that I have with moving plants is that people move a lot of plants and make themselves work and put plants in when you really need to concentrate on living on the part of the house you're living in all the time, the inside of the house. And the plants tend to sit long periods of time, or like the case where I brought a couple of our special plants in, they sit in the wrong place for years before you finally move them out of there. You can always get them back from a grower or from other people, unless it's something special like a great aunt's iris or whatever. So don't go packing up a whole truckload of plants to take with you unless you have a plan for where they're going to go. This one will have a homeowners association that we'll have to work with to do a design even. But she has some hellebores and they take a long time to get big. And I said, we can take a division of your hellebores We can certainly put something like that Serbian bellflower that I've been showing people on Fridays here because it's growing underneath the overhang. It's growing without any real direct light on it, and it's looked good all year. And we've been making a list. Dwarf lady's mantle, we think would grow pretty well there and stay small.
Ooh, gentian.
The
Yeah.
late gentian, yep, the late upright gentian. The little geraniums, there are perennial geraniums that don't get much taller than about 6 inches, and ballerina is one that I
They're
love.
so cute.
Yeah. Some of the coral bell hybrids that are gold or orange, like Carmel or Amber Waves. Forest grass, which still would have to be divided regularly to keep it from hanging over too much. And black mondo grass. I'm looking for the group here. Any other suggestions? Because I'll add them to the list. And when they're settled in the house, it'll give our friend and us a fun trip to the nursery to go looking for the things on the list. So I hope
Gretchen says, and when you move, you can leave behind such unpleasant weeds as creeping Charlie.
Yep. It's and in this case, this yard that our friends are moving out of is infested with Star of Bethlehem. So I'm not sorry to be moving away from Star of Bethlehem, but I've learned that you can
That's for
move into
sure.
another set of weeds. We certainly moved into a great set of weeds here.
Here, yep.
Yeah. Any suggestions for what might grow on the north side of a house and stay small but be very interesting for a gardener who's longing for her great big garden that she used to have? So we're going to need lots of variety going up there.
I like the ginger, but I don't know if it'd be
Some of the evergreen gingers might be really good there.
yep. And then what's the other one we have back low? White flower. Shoot.
Is it the one that
I'm not
comes?
sure it goes on. Dwarf goat's beard, Nancy says.
Oh, the
Epimedium.
true dwarf ghost beards. Yeah.
Yep. Japanese painted ferns. Ajugas. Trillium in and out, so you'd have to have a later coming. Plumbago might work in there, except for it's so late coming, but if you have some small bulbs in there,
Yeah.
or even bigger bulbs.
Yeah. Be a little afraid to put things that spread in there because they'll spread and take over everything.
Yeah, Kenworth ivy.
That's right. It looks so cute in the pictures that we were sent earlier where it's just
Yeah.
way through things.
The ivory sedge, Acarix.
Oh, like Ice Dancer. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, good job.
That almost doubles my list. And certainly we'll think of other things along the way, or she'll want to try some things. She always puts annuals in, a few annuals here and there. Thank you. It's what garden friends are good for. Also got a question this week about a fine line buckthorn. That's Rhamnus frangula fine line, originally called Rhamnus frangula Ron Williams. And some of the branches in it have died back, and the gardener wants to know, should I just give up? I can't figure out what it is. They've died back, and the base has little tiny holes in it, and there's some cottony stuff there. So we've been looking for that. And I want to start by saying that buckthorn is not allowed for sale in a number of places because it is invasive. Fine line buckthorn has been given something of an okay by some horticulturalists because it doesn't produce very much seed, and its seed is viable at like a 3% rate, whereas regular buckthorn seed, its species is 98% viable. So it is still for sale in a lot of places. It's a fine lacy leaf and a very upright plant, so it makes a good hedge. That's what people grow it for. But it is susceptible to a couple of cankers. Cankers are the wound that develops when a fungus probably got into this branch when before it had wood, and it was just a twig. There was a damage where it rubbed in the wind or got a bird's foot scraped it or something happened to it, and spores of one of the fungus pests got into that opening, and it ate the cambium right there, but it was just a little bit of spores, and that made a dead spot. And then the next spring, when the plant started growing again, it moved further out, and it moves in kind of a eye slit shape. Some people call it a football shape. This canker that we're looking at is black knot, which develops a black coloration The fungus that randomness gets doesn't form this kind of thing, but it does. This shows how the canker spreads. Now it's gotten wider, and it will kill now this twig as it cuts it off from all of the stuff coming up through the branch, and it'll kill the whole twig, and the twig will break off. The part that's involved in the fungus, whatever the fungus is that's caused the canker, is inside that wood. If you saw through that wood, you'll find a discoloration where there's dead stuff underneath. You need to cut well below the canker in order to take off all the diseased wood and get rid of the infection. So here's the center part that I have to take out. That might be out of that tree. No, it's a different tree. But I had to cut below all the infection in order to get rid of that stuff that's there. You can use a fungicide, but that's always going to be a weak part. It's killed half the cambium. It's going to be a weak part. So there are a couple funguses. Yeah, there it is. There are a couple of funguses that randomness can get. Buckthorn. This is Japanese maple, and this is not a canker. This is wound wood that's forming. This part that's here is the tree's actual roll of fast-growing tissue called wound wood that is forming in order to close over the damage that happened in the wintertime when the cambium got mostly killed in here. And it took a few years before the bark above the damage cracked and came off. But the whole time since it was damaged, the tree has been forming this patch that's going to cover over the wounds. So you have to differentiate between things like black knot and this. But Phytophthora is one of the fungus that can get into buckthorns, and Phytophthora can get into a whole lot of plants. Its name is Phytophthora ramorum, which kind of means eats everything, and it's associated primarily with the soil being overly wet, and then the roots get infected or the crown gets infected or both. But and Phytophthora is something that the buckthorn can get, but generally they do this: they die in parts, and the whole thing dies it doesn't just do one branch here or there. And it does form cankers that don't have any white or fuzzy stuff on them. So we kept looking, and there's another canker, the great name, tubercularia. Run the other way from that. It's showing it on a Russian olive, but the symptoms would be the same on the fine line. And this does involve, these are eruptions. This is where the spores are going to erupt from underneath the damaged bark. And that leaves little holes behind. So there might be bark beetles in there which work their way in after something's already in trouble. So they wouldn't be in the cause. There might be bark beetles that make the little holes, but it might be that there's been sticky stuff coming out through the holes, and maybe some fluff from plants nearby has stuck on the plant. So we sent a note to say that's probably what it is, and along with the reference from the textbooks so that they could look and see what it is. But we didn't get a picture of this randomness of this buckthorn, so we're not sure what it is that we're looking at. And we ended up with 3 or 4 possibilities. Another one being root problems. And this is dieback from tubercularia. The whole thing just dies back. That whole branch dies back. And root problems could be one of them, or stems actually girdling each other. If the plant, most of those fine line buckthorns are grown as cuttings, so that they get the same characteristics in the seed in the offspring as they had in the adult. And sometimes to make them bush look fuller faster, they'll stick several cuttings in together. And if there's several cuttings and 2 of them are in both, one is sandwiched in the middle between the 2 of them, as they each get thick, it'll cut off some of the canes, and they'll die. So it could be that too. It's just interesting to look at these things and find out how many things can go wrong. It makes it feel good that things, for the most part, don't go that wrong for us. And fine line is a new plant, relatively speaking. It was only in 89. It was in the 80s that Ron Williams, who it was named for, found it as a seedling from the regular species buckthorn type used called tall hedge. And he started it because he kept it because it had neat foliage. And by 2000, early 2000s, 2003 maybe, he'd sold it to Spring Meadow Nursery, who renamed it Fine Line and started producing it. So it's not been around all that long, which means that we don't know all the problems it can have. Its parent is hardy to zone 3. Yeah, the zone 3. So it can take a lot of cold, but we don't know that this one can take a lot of cold, and we know that cold on the trunks, just like on that Japanese maple, can cause damage that opens the door for fungus to get in. So there might be protection that it might need in the winter, there might be fungicide that it needs in the spring, or you might need to start over.
Diane says, I couldn't grow anything in the narrow area by a sidewalk near the porch, half shade, little rain, but Burgarten sage cuttings she took last fall and thrived. Looked beautiful this summer. I may have to cut them back next year, but it will be worth it. It'll be its second year. And then Barbara has a pumpkin question. Will a pumpkin prematurely separated from the vine still turn orange? It is currently partially orange, but mostly green.
Probably not, but you're going to need to put it in someplace warm to get it to do that. Yeah, when they separate prematurely, there's not a lot of chance that they're going to fully ripen, and they might get soft. Yeah, we had some big ones growing in the neighborhood here from giant pumpkin seeds that someone bought at the state fair and shared out to gardeners, and most of them didn't make it. Most of them rotted off of
Yep.
the plant. That was
Where
fun.
do you find Burgarten sage? I hardly ever see it. I did find it in Kalamazoo, but then it stopped. I think I noticed it when we were talking to George. Or when I was at George's at Telly's, and
Yeah,
he had some.
it is definitely still available. It's a good.
Yeah.
No nursery can grow them all, so you have to call around or order it in, or find somebody who's got some. Just find the people
Yep.
who have it, and go visit them in the spring when they're cutting it back. Like Diane, she's got to keep it from coming over her walkway. We have to keep ours a little bit under control, and I like it to be fresh, new growth. So I cut it all the way down every year. You've got a ton of cuttings that you could be using, some of which already have roots on them because they were laying close enough to the ground and scraping themselves.
Yeah.
Because our friend is moving, we have a bunch of beautiful things she's found in the yard. This one's already gone. Put it on Facebook Marketplace and it's gone. Isn't that beautiful? Still has the ribbon in it, still has ink on it. And the person who bought it for 20 bucks is actually a writer who's going to use it. He likes to write on a real typewriter, which is very cool. But I have a bunch of garden tools, which I took over here in order to keep the clutter in the house that our friend is trying to clear out. From being moved from one place to another and constantly around. I brought them home, and we don't need any more tools than what we have. But if there's anyone in this community who has a youngster who's starting out who needs tools, we have bulb planters, bow rakes, a electric weed whip, a battery powered chainsaw. It's the kind that I have, and they're a nice little saw. This wonderful big 2 foot, a little bit more than 2 feet tall fiberglass all-weather pot can't go with them to the new house. This is a authentic metal milk jug.
Milk container.
It's a little over 2 feet tall, and a great thing to put a plant on top of. It's heavy enough that it doesn't fall over on its own. Spades, forks, scoop shovels, rakes, those grass shears that you can turn these to different angles and clip from above to clip the grass along the edge. Even a snow shovel. And we're just looking for donations or to make sure that they go to a good home. Teresa keeps pulling things out and saying, "Oh, I hate to throw this away," and she is definitely having to throw a lot of things away. So contact us if you've know somebody who's starting off and looking for garden tools, because there's a bunch of them here. And peony hoops. If you want to come by or send us an email, and we'll arrange a drop off someplace. These staking kits can go somewhere. 3 foot tall bamboo hoops to put into pots for vines and things. Yeah, one of those folding fences if you use those to keep your dogs out. Thank
But
you.
not that bonsai ginkgo.
No. And, yeah, it would be nice if she had something like that, wouldn't it? Go in a minute. Go in.
Oh my gosh.
Question about how to take care of roses. Marina said I went to Tully's and they had their roses all on sale, And look, they're beautiful, and they are beautiful. They're gorgeous plants. They do tend to have to be held up because they're grafted onto a tall standard that's not thick enough yet. It will be in years' time, but the years' time is a problem. You have to protect this graft up here where the stem is connected to the flowering part. And there's another graft down here, like on all roses, that has to be protected. So you have to protect both grafts. This is a red tree rose. And Arena says, how am I going to keep them in the winter? Well, this is what we've done with ours. This was a special tree rose that a client had. This was, I think, the third year it was in. And when it gets good and cold, but we don't wait for it necessarily for ice. There are people who say, you got to wait until it gets killed back. We're going to dig a hole. Deb and I were digging that day, about 18 inches deep. There are a lot of texts that I've read that say that you need to go 42 inches deep to be below the frost line in Michigan Zone 5. But I can't think that we've ever had the frost go that deep into the ground in my tenure as a gardener. 18 inches has worked for us. We're digging a hole in the spare space in the garden, 18 inches deep. It's deeper on one end than the other because the roots extend down a ways. And we lay it down there, just like you see it, roses and leaves and everything there. Some people say you have to take those off. I say, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to put it in here like this. And you might be able to see that we've also put some other things in there. Some cannas that we dug up and clipped off the tops. Dahlia. At least one year we put in elephant ears too. And now we're going to put the rose on top of them. And then we put can't see it here. We put a cloth on top of the rose, something that would keep us from cutting through the trunk and the graft section. I'm not too worried about the branches. They're going to get cut back in the spring. But the cloth helps us when we dig it up in the spring to keep from digging straight down into it. And we've also tied a string onto it, a nylon colored string. I can't see it here, but it's like a bright orange color. And we've trailed that out of the hole so that we can remember for sure where it is. We're pretty sure we'll be able to find it.
Hopefully.
Yeah. But we cover it all up. And I can tell you that every year we take it out, it looked exactly the same as we put it in. The flowers, of course, were all discolored and whatever, but we brought it back up, put it back in the garden where it needed to go. And I got fancy. Well, I got lazy maybe one year. These weren't in real great shape at my clients when I was putting things to bed in the fall, but I thought, I can't see them they keep buying them new all the time. It's very mild here, and there's a very well-protected place in between two fences and underneath a bunch of trees. I'm going to put them at ground level and mound above them. So I did. And when I took them out in the spring, this is them coming out in the spring, they had been chewed. There was no bark left on any of the main trunks, branches, or roots. But rabbits and voles had just done them in. Hasn't happened to us when we put them in the ground, but at ground level, they obviously could still get in. But they are weak, and when we get them from the nursery, they're often strapped very tight to a stake, and they're strapped so tight that they can't grow well. This is in the spring when they're put back in, and we cut them back just like a tree, like a hybrid tea rose. Cut them back hard, and take off any suckers that have come up. I usually take those off in the fall, and they do grow back up. They're extending themselves. They're not in full sun here, so they're stretching more than I like to see. But they do grow. And I think if it's a special rose tree, it's worth keeping. Now you can also put them into a root cellar or a Michigan basement. Our friend Brenda used to let us use her Michigan basement for her clients. Big rosemary and jades and a brugmansia. And basically we would just roll those into the basement and ask her to check them once a month to make sure that they weren't drying out, or invite us over for tea once a month and we would check them together. And just by finding prune, rose in winter or rose winterizing, you find this is one of the articles that you find on our website. And you'll also, because roses are mentioned when we're doing the figs, you'll find that it has to do with closing things up for figs too. This is our fig tree at the Detroit Zoo. Phil is in charge of figs, and we're doing the Minnesota tip. We're not taking it all the way out of the ground. We just dug up the roots on one side, and we've tipped it down to the ground. tipped it right down to the ground, covered it, in this case with a tarp, and then made a grave mound on top of it. And that's called the Minnesota tip. And you can do that with just about anything. I will warn you though about the voles and stuff. If you're going to do it at ground level like this, and it's something they like to eat, roses are certainly up there on the list. You may have to put a mouse vole bait in there, something that they would be attracted to and eat. And I personally hate to put that stuff out where a fox or a cat or maybe some helpful animal would get into it.
Bruce is wondering when can he dig up his cannas? Do I wait until leaves and stalks die back?
You can dig them up anytime now. Well, once the leaves begin to show some damage from some cold nights, they get brown on the edges. You can dig them up. I've dug them up when they still those that we dug up um for that were they still. I know I had a picture at one point of their hole. So the bottom leaves had turned brown on them, but they were still leafy all the way to the top. You can also wait and let them harden off by natural processes of killing them back. But if you dig them up early and you put them in a warm spot for a few days until the tubers, which come up, they're rhizomes, not tubers really, they come up pink and white. They're still fresh. Put them in a place where they've got good air and warmth. And in a couple of days, they harden. The outside edge hardens, and that's a good thing to help them get through the winter. It helps them hold moisture in. So if you dig them up early and they're still all pink, let them harden off. The advice that I first got on doing this was to put them on a screen, suspend the screen someplace in your garage so the air can go under them and over them. That's kind of what we did, but not all the time. And then just cover them up. Say stop growing. Sorry, I'll go past these quickly.
Diane has had success with the Burgarten sage looking in the nursery herb section, especially in the spring. It's often called cooking or culinary sage, and it's been pretty common to her. And it's now after 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay. Then we'll take ourselves to the end, and I'll see what we missed.
Nothing.
Nothing. We made it to the end. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Golden.
Robin's asking, I acquired a cold hardy fig, Chicago something. Will I need to protect it?
Yes, they're cold hardy, but they're not. If
They're
you
not
want
cold hardy.
if you want to get figs from it, you're going to need to keep some wood alive, and so you're going to need to protect it in some way. Phil has a number of fig trees. He was always bringing us another fig tree for someone to plant,
Yep.
and he keeps them in pots in his garage, if they're small enough to go in the garage. So, but if you don't protect them, they may survive and they'll just grow back foliage. It's kind of like having the blue or pink hydrangeas that are just foliage and not blooming. We never got to eat any of the figs off our tree at the zoo. It had figs, but obviously the people who came to visit the zoo recognized it as a fig tree too, because they were gone. They were always plucked off and eaten before we could get back to them. Well, thank you for coming this week
Yep.
in here. And you might, if you're driving around Novi tomorrow, or Waterford, or Northville, or South Lyon,
Other
or
places.
Troy, and you see people wearing yellow shirts and standing out there with signs, we're out there with them because we're not pleased with the way that people are treating each other in this country, and we think the leadership is set the tone for that. So we're going to go out and protest tomorrow, and we'll wave at you as you go by. Beep your horn at us so we know that there's someone else with a like mind.
Hell no,
Let's
we
see.
won't go.
We'll be here. Yeah, we'll be here next Friday. But the Friday after that, we'll take off because November 1st is our weekend walkabout about compromised roots in the European garden tour, and that's on November 1st. So next Free for All Friday is next Friday. Then we take off a Friday, and we'll be back on November 7th. November 7th. Talk to you then.
All right, everybody. Ta-ta for now and good night.